Before we can get into it, just want to get your sense of what has taken place over the past couple of hours in Singapore.
I think, obviously, this is a very big historic deal. I don't think there's any surprises here, which is why the markets aren't reacting that much. So I think it's kind of business as usual. We knew that he wouldn't be going there unless he was going to sign something, unless there was going to be some positive pronouncement. And I think we kind of got what everyone thought we would.
It's interesting that you have that take, because it is the way the markets haven't gone either direction on this. However, there's a sense of optimism about all this. As somebody who's traded this, or is there a way to, I guess the better question is there a way to trade all of this at all?
Well, I think we've been trading it the past 12 months leading up to this point. So this is semi-anticlimactic, right? In the sense that we went through the period a year ago. Remember, a year ago, we were very close to military confrontation. I don't think people realize just how close we were to some type of armed conflict. And here we are a year later. And again, so much of this has already been played out. And I think this is anticlimactic.
Right. So what happens now, though, in terms of how you think about it relative to the measures that are going to take place, we imagine, over the next several months?
This was a tail event.
Right.
The tail event is that it could always lead to nuclear conflict. North Korea's 25 million people, economically a very sadly bereft country. It's just, unless, again, it was going to lead to some type of conflict, it's a non-event and non-issue, particularly now that it seems that we're having some meaningful adult dialogue between the two countries. And I think it's a great thing, but I think we'll see it slip off the radar screen.
You think we will? And are you hopeful that something will happen?
Absolutely. I think it's fantastic. I think it could be Donald Trump's crowning achievement so far in his presidency.
Looking more...
A lot better than the tax cut.
Really?
Absolutely. But we can talk about that.
Let's look more broadly just for a moment, just as a macro trader, in terms of the way you look around the world, the way you look at growth here in the United States. You've talked about a potential bubble emerging. Mm-hmm. Are you still in the same place?
I think that there's three things that are kind of driving the world today, and they all start and end here in the United States. The rest of the world, I can't remember a time when things are as kind of boring as they are, right? Western Europe, somewhat static policy there, even though we're going to talk about the end of QE. Japan's been relatively unimaginative in what they're doing in the economic situation. Same thing with China. You have some idiosyncratic stories in emerging markets like Brazil and Mexico and Turkey. But where the action is here in the United States, and that's because you've got three things that are kind of pushing the prices in all the asset classes, and that's first fiscal policy, really fiscal profligacy, monetary policy, and then of course we have, and I would call it more of a trade irritant than a real trade problem, even though you have to monitor that one closely because it can escalate.
Are you worried about a trade war?
You know, you have to put things in perspective, right? If we just look at our four biggest trading partners, they have a simple weighted average tariff of about 6%. We have one of 3.5% or 3.5%. So there's a 2.5% gap in unfairness, right? If what the president was trying to do was just to normalize the tariffs, it'd be 2.5% on, we have $1.5 trillion of exports. It's a 40 or $50 billion problem in an $87 trillion world economy. The danger would be that he's just not trying to equalize the playing field and equalize the tariff discrepancy. The danger is that he's trying to do away with the bilateral trade deficits country by country. And there's a problem with that because we're running a structural budget deficit. If you just balance the accounts, the way that typically that balances is that you run a trade deficit to do that. So on the one hand, we have this massive budget deficit that the administration and Congress has engineered. On the other hand, he's trying to do away with bilateral trade deficits, and the accounts don't balance. So it could be dangerous if he's focusing not just on trying to get free and fair trade, but to actually do away with that bilateral trade deficit, because it's actually jamming a square peg in a round hole. I'm probably right now in my positions, literally as light as I've been. I can't remember how many years it's been since I've been this light.
When you say been this light, in what
in
respect?
my positions.
Meaning you're mostly in cash?
Meaning I don't have a lot of macro positions on right now, because I think the reward risk in a variety of things is diminished at this particular point in time. I like to have significant leverage positions when I think there's an imminent price move directly ahead. I don't like having positions, and it's probably a fault of mine at times, just because I think ultimately interest rates are going up, or I think ultimately the dollar's going to go higher. I'd much prefer to be leveraged right at that point when they move the most, so that I'm not subject to unexpected events overnight or over the course of weeks or months.
Is there something you're waiting for?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot I'm waiting. I think the third and fourth quarter are going to be phenomenal trading times. I have a feeling we're getting ready to go into a summer lull.
Summer lull. And what do you think is going to happen in the third and fourth quarter, though?
Oh, I think we'll see rates move significantly higher beginning sometime in the late third quarter, early fourth quarter, and I think it'll be interesting because I think the stock market also has the ability to go a lot higher at the end of the year.
Tell us about how Just began and what this ETF is all about.
It really was one of the cases of from the mouth of babes comes innocent wisdom. 6 years ago, a student raises his hand in the back of a class in Columbia and asks a professor, why can't corporations be a force for goodness? Why can't they use their capital, human and financial, in the pursuit of justness, just capital, if you will? And that professor, who that question was asked to, was Deepak Chopra, who's a friend of mine. He called me up and said, listen, I don't know much about Wall Street, but here's this idea that has a great deal of appeal. And it's really easy to dismiss a big, airy-fairy idea like that, but the reality is that the philanthropic sector is about $360 billion a year. Mm-hmm. The government sector is about $4 trillion, 10 times that size. The private sector is $15 trillion, so it's 40 times the size of philanthropic giving every year. If you're going to have true social change, if you're going to have real societal betterment, it has to start with the private sector. It has to start with business. And that kind of led us to think, okay, this is worth a better look. So we got a small group of friends and we started looking, because I think the original idea was that we were going to just see if companies who were ticking the boxes on a variety of just behaviors, how they performed. And the interesting thing, all the way back in 2013, when we just ran some most basic screens, is those companies always, on a price basis, outperformed the rest of the stock market, which was at the time really interesting to me, obviously being a markets guy.
Did you believe in this whole social impact, social responsible investing approach?
So here's what's interesting. When I thought we'd found something new, I didn't even know. Here I've been on Wall Street for almost 35 years. I didn't even know there was a $3 trillion ESG, environmental, social governance industry built around it. And of course, that in itself was telling that and admittedly, I'm not a stock guy, I'm a macro guy, but that I never even heard of it. It was because it was so fractured. It was because there were just niche indices and funds doing it. And a lot of them always had an agenda. And so our first idea, the first question we had to ask ourselves is, how do you define what is just? And someone had the bright idea of, let's ask the American public. Let's ask the greatest people in the greatest country who for the last 250 years have dominated this world. Let's let them define for us, so there's no question, what is justness. And so we began polling, and boy, does the American public have a story to tell.
And they came up with, effectively through your poll, 7 different drivers of what you think moves a company in the right direction. And they have very little to do with actually a profit and loss statement.
Well, here's the most interesting thing. So we started out, we started focus grouping, and then we started polling. And we took 200 metrics and then combined them into about 39 that we actually measure, and then we aggregate those into the 7 drivers. And the 7 drivers are, in order of importance, the first is, how do you pay and treat your workers? And that's 23%. The second is, how do you treat your customers? Do you respect their privacy? Do you respect them individually? And that's 19%. And the third is, at 17%, is products. Do you make high quality, low cost, and socially beneficial products? And then there's environmental sustainability, communities, domestic job creation, and the final driver is 6%. It's 6% is, do you serve your shareholders and management? And I mean, that's incredible, right, when you think about it, because the way capitalism is practiced today is that I'd say 80 to 85% of what the C-suite, what the corporate boardrooms do, is managing for the profitability of a particular company. And everything else kind of comes after that. And it's diametrically opposed to what the greatest people in the greatest country on earth think should be the way that they manage their companies. And so the first time I saw that, it was like being smacked in the face. But over the years, after a while, you can't help, I think, as our board and our staff and other people, it starts to impact the way that you think about what actually companies should be doing on this earth. If I can just, one other thing, how did we get to where we are today in today's definition of what a company's mission is? If you go back to 1970, Milton Friedman famously said, the social responsibility of a company is to improve its profits. That's how we got to this shareholder management, I shouldn't say me first, but certainly the concentration on their benefits. And when Milton Friedman said that, tax rates had just come from 91% to 70%, and social inequality, or excuse me, income inequality was 1/5 of what it is today. So you can see that 47-year-old definition of capitalism, which every CEO, every shareholder began to adopt. You can see how it was relevant at the time, but fast forward to where we are today, it's a different deal. In 1985, 90% of the wealth of this country was owned by the 35% of the wealth of this country was owned by the bottom 90%. Today, 23% of the wealth of this country is owned by the bottom 90%, and that 12% difference has gone to the top 1/10 of 1%. Right. So capitalism may need modernizing.